Last season, Atlanta's defense gave us a glimpse of what they could be when they're fully healthy and firing on all cylinders. It was young, fast, aggressive, and most importantly, we saw the building blocks get put in place for what could be an elite defense. There were young players making impact plays. The pass rush finally started to look dangerous, and the defense had stretches where it genuinely felt like it could control a football game. But this is the thing, promising doesn't always mean it's a finished product. Even when a young defense has a very good season, there is still another level to reach, especially for Atlanta. And normally that doesn't come from changing out a player or two. It's just ironing out those weaknesses that you have in your game to take that next step. So in this video, I picked out 4 defenders on our defense that are in their first or second, and in one person's case, a third year. And I want to highlight some of the things that they can improve upon in their games to help this defense take a next step. And this is not me saying those players are bad. In fact, it's really just saying the opposite. In my opinion, I'm talking about them because they've shown they could be competent, at least in some point of the season. So if you guys do enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Let's go and get into it. So the first person I want to start with is James Pearce Jr. And obviously his biggest strength last year was his pass rush. He had 10.5 sacks. He really had 11.5 sacks because he got a sack on a 2-point conversion attempt. But, you know, they really don't count those stats. But that's besides the point. The tackles for a loss for a reason. There were snaps where his speed allowed him to get into the backfield, beat a blocker to a spot, and completely disrupt the run before it could even develop. So the ability is there, but the technical details have to become more consistent. One of the biggest things I want to see from him is improved blocking recognition. So when Pearce is aligned on the edge, he has to become more aware of what the offensive lineman in front of him is doing, or in some cases a tight end. Is he getting a base block? Is a defender or is a blocker trying to reach him? Is meet that blocker with authority? There were times on film where he recognized the concept correctly, and you could tell that he understood a blocker was moving away from him and that somebody was coming to kick him out. But instead of attacking that block, he would just allow the puller to come to him. So that's one thing I think James Pearce Jr. can improve upon, you know, just simply just recognizing the block and playing accordingly, okay? The next person I want to talk about is Jalon Walker, and it's been a really nauseating conversation. I keep saying it's like every other video. People want him to play off ball, and I just simply don't believe he should be doing that. But I've come around recently and I've been like, okay, he can play off ball as long as it's in a base defense, because he's not going to be covering a lot of receivers in a base defense. There's going to be more tight ends and running backs he's going to have to guard at the backfield. And he has more than enough athleticism to be able to guard those positions as opposed to a 5'10" receiver that's going to be running a 4.3 40, okay? But whether he stays on the ball or whether he moves to an off-ball role in certain packages, there are 2 things that he can work on in both of those areas of his game. And starting with the pass rush element, I think is having a better plan when he's rushing, because a lot of his sacks are sometimes just effort sacks where he has a very high motor. Some of them were clean hits, but there were also some where you could see the glimpse of him getting a quick win on a tackle. For example, in week 2 against the Vikings in a low red zone, he had a very quick win. I think it looked like a cross chop, and he won cleanly and he was able to get the sack. But then there are other times where he just simply cannot do a single thing, and it felt like it was feast or famine. So I think having a better pass rush plan would be in line for him to get better and take that next step. And he gets that pass rush plan, specifically a power move or a bull rush, I think he'll be really good in terms of getting to the quarterback, okay? Because the ability is there, it's just being consistent. Now, if we're talking about transitioning to an off-ball role, I would really like him to get better going backwards in general, not just playing better in coverage, not just being able to go sideline to sideline. It's just moving backwards, period. Because we see him when he's going forward and he doesn't have to think. He's a very good player, but when he was on the opposite end of these replacement fire zones where you're blitzing somebody from the one side and he has to drop out on the other side of the line of scrimmage, he's just sitting there covering grass or just looking at the quarterback. And maybe we were coaching guys to play with vision, but there were some times where he would actually relate to a defender in coverage on those fire zones. And I wonder why he just didn't do that consistently. Maybe it's because it's built into the play call. Maybe it's a certain way they were teaching it where we only want to play with vision on these specific sets. But whatever it may be, I think he needs to get a better job or do a better job of matching receivers in coverage, okay? Because it's not always just covering grass. It's 2026. If you play country cover 3 or country cover 2, you're gonna get ripped to shreds, and nobody does that anymore. Okay, it's stupid as hell. But once he starts trusting what he's seeing and he doesn't have sand in his pants or stuck in the mud, and he's simply just trusting what his eyes see, because he's done it a lot, even going back to college, where he's playing that off-ball role and he's just kind of slow to things because he sees one thing but he wants to confirm it and then go. But if he's just trusting his instincts, and which I believe Jeff Ulbrich can really elevate those, and he starts to play fast without thinking, oh my gosh, then I would be like, okay, let him play off ball. But that's to be determined. We're gonna see what's in store, especially coming for training camp and the preseason, because I know he's gonna get some preseason run. So the third player is Brandon Dorlus. Now, he really didn't play his first year for some odd reason, and you see in year 2 he took a very big step. He had 8.5 sacks. But in terms of what he can improve upon, it's going to be similar to what James Pearce Jr. was. It's his run defense, okay? And once again, it's not me saying he's a bad run defender, because we've seen him be able to make splash plays in the run game. It's just has to get more consistent. And also another thing similar to James Pearce Jr., he has a natural size disadvantage sometimes because he is under 300 pounds, all right? But the thing is, we've seen Grady Jarrett in our defense be a very good run defender. He's about 6 feet tall, 285 pounds. So that excuse is really out the window sometimes, because if we see a smaller guy be able to be an elite run defender at his prime, then what's to stop Brandon Dorlus from doing the same thing, who in my opinion is a more gifted version of Grady Jarrett. Okay, he's a little bit bigger, very much a better pass rusher. It's once that run defense catches up to that pass rush, he's going to be a really good player. And specifically what I'm talking about his run defense is really just the get off, because when you see him get off sometimes in the run game and he has a clean first step and he gets a step on the guard or tackle that he's going against, it's really over before it starts. And that's why he had a handful of TFLs this year. But sometimes when he doesn't get off as cleanly and an offensive lineman is going to match his speed and get off faster than him and get both hands on him, the rep is over and he's going to get driven back. But I really feel like, if he can consistently win on that first step, not even necessarily just win, but get a stalemate at the line of scrimmage on most plays, then he would be a very good every down defensive tackle, because right now I think he's just best used in passing situations. But hey, there's always room to improve. So that's one place I'm going to look at is his run defense, and that's it. And so if Brandon Dorlus can improve those two things, we're not going to be talking about a rotational defensive tackle. We're going to be talking about a Pro Bowl level player, which he should have been a Pro Bowler last year anyways, because he had 8.5 sacks. I think he was second in all defensive tackles in terms of sacks. And that's really how high I think his ceiling is, because if he were to improve that run defense and keep the same amount of sack production, we're not just talking about a Pro Bowl. We're talking about all pro now. And now we got to pay him going into next year. So yeah, good problem to have. And then the final player I want to talk about is Cobee Bryant. Now, this might be one of the more unconventional picks, because everybody has pretty much penciled in AJ Terrell in the boundary, Avion Terrell to the field, and Billy Bowman Jr. in the slot. Okay. And I understand that that's a valid way to think about this defensive back room. However, in my head, I think the best way we could utilize Atlanta's defensive back room is for Cobee Bryant to be that field corner, AJ to be the boundary corner, and Avion being the nickel. Okay. Because for one, that'll be a way better cost-effective option, okay? You're pretty much paying Cobee Bryant nothing, and he's going to be giving you starter reps if he takes that next step. You're going to have Avion in the nickel, who's on a rookie contract, and you're going to have AJ Terrell, right? You're paying him big money to be that CB1. But from a money standpoint, having an undrafted free agent take that next step and be I won't say a star corner, but be a very viable option opposite of AJ, I would like that to happen for us. Activated to the active roster. But even when he did play, it was a very mixed bag of results when you watched him play, okay? Some plays he would be in position. He would get a stop on a third down against Carolina, but then you would have the Week 15 game against the Buccaneers where he gets thrown in and gets his first extended run as a corner, and Mike Evans is just beating him down, okay? And we know what Mike Evans is. We know what he stands for. But it's not like he was just completely getting toasted, because he was right there in the plays most times. And I understand being close is not the same as being able to make the play. We saw AJ Terrell be one of the worst corners in football and then turn into literally the best corner that we've ever seen in the past few decades, or past decade rather, since the PFF era, all right? That was literally a 1 year difference from 2020 to 2021. Night and day difference. I'm not saying Kobe's going to make that jump, but it's possible. I won't say it's possible. There's nobody ever like 2021 AJ Terrell. Okay, but you get what I'm saying. But enough of the rambling. The thing I want him to get better at in terms of his technique is to get his pad level lower. And yes, pad level matters when you're talking about corners, because if you're playing low in your back pedal and when you're getting out of your break, you know, the change of direction is much easier. But when you keep a high pad level and your hips are high, especially when you don't have really fluid hips, you just can't get in and out of your breaks. And we saw it on tape with him, even when he got a pass breakup against Mike Evans, and you watch the replay of that, the technique was just not where you would want it to be, to where you could say, okay, if he does that every single time, he's going to get production on the ball. It's not, because when you watch it, he was stumbling out of his break, and then he went and just pretty much damn near killed Mike Evans. Okay, I like the result, but the process has to be better. So the pad level will be one thing I think he could work on. And then the other thing I would say he needs to work on is his aggressiveness. I'm not saying don't be aggressive, because for one, like, he has a natural size advantage. He's like 185, 190 pounds. Okay, so he's smaller than most of these receivers he's going against. Okay, I welcome the aggression, but it has to be controlled aggression, because sometimes it will get to the point where it's an obvious penalty. Like, we watched him against Dallas get like back-to-back penalties or whatever it was, and they ended up scoring like a few plays later. I don't mind him being touchy and handsy with the receiver, but he has to learn how to do it within the rule book. Okay, we've seen corners be able to do this a lot, where they know how physical they can get right before that ball gets thrown to them. Okay, so if he can work on his physicality in terms of controlling that aggression, and then fix his pad level in and out of his breaks and in his back pedal, he can for sure be a starting level corner, in my opinion. All right. Hey, I got faith in him. I got faith in pretty much everybody on this roster except for number 40. Maybe somebody else too, but I have to just think about it. But that's besides the point. So those are the 4 guys I want to highlight in terms of what they can improve upon in their game and how they could help this defense take another step in terms of being an elite defense. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys later in the next video. Goodbye.